Welcome in. It's the run-up. We're getting ready for Atlanta and Orlando tomorrow night at Exploria Stadium. There will be fans in the building in Central Florida. No Atlanta United fans that I know of, unless they probably live in Central Florida. I don't think anybody else is getting in. It's going to be on Big Fox. There's been some things going on in the last couple of days since the last match. John, you're calling the shots tonight. Where do you want to go as we get ready for Orlando and Atlanta?
Well, I guess you want to start with the news that has the words that have come across on the Twitter machine in the last hour or so involving rumors and alleged interest involving Ezequiel Barco overseas.
Sure, if you want to.
Yeah, let's start there. Jorge Baravalle on Twitter has put out there, and he has 17,700 Twitter followers. And Jorge works for Fox Sports, Radio Rivadavia, and a couple of other places as well. And he put on his Twitter account about 5 o'clock Eastern time this afternoon that Sevilla prepares an offer to Atlanta United for the pass from Ezequiel Barco. Monchi has been following the former Independiente player for a long time. So that came across the Twitters this afternoon about 5 o'clock.
Well, there was more to it than that because this has been ongoing for a minute. We talked about it when the Sevilla rumors first started, and they were coming from not reputable sources like this one. They were coming from fan sites, which maybe knew a little something. But Calcio Mercato had a post earlier in the day that Fiorentina and Sevilla want Ezequiel Barco, and Fiorentina had been mentioned before. Barco had mentioned them specifically in an interview with Argentine television. Now they've got some competition, it seems like. So let's see where all of that goes. That's all been hitting over the last few hours. Who knows? This is where we're at right now. It's silly season, and it's going to get sillier, it seems like. Speaking of silly, I think we have at least one of our guests this evening in Jarrett Smith, who is in a car headed out of town. Is that right?
Yeah, on the way to mountains. I'll come back when everyone calms down.
Okay.
Have you seen the rumors today, Jared? I don't know if that's going to happen.
Well, I'm going to go live in the mountains then. I'll see y'all later.
Basically, that's where we're at.
I'll come down to the feed store twice a year for the stuff I need, and I'll go back up in the holla.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know, and we'll just have to wait and see here. Sevilla is a team who these are the kinds of players that they buy, and this is a team that has been very successful in buying these kinds of players. So is it crazy? No, it's not crazy. You're actually getting reputable journalists now who are talking about this, both Calcio Mercato and the later follow-up on the Sevilla rumors. So keep an eye on it. You never know. These things sometimes get started this way and nothing comes of it. Sometimes it starts a process. We will find out here shortly, I think, if this is real or if this is not real. Where do you want to go next, John? Because there's really nothing else to add on this at the moment. I mean, the numbers make sense. I mean, they're not crazy. They've gone down a little bit from where we thought they could be before the pandemic. So it is what it is. Again, I mean, the only thing I would say without knowing more about what's going on here and if this is legit or if this is just talk, you don't get to pick when people come into the market. And this is a problem that MLS has had for years because of the calendar. And it's just something that's going to happen. You're in your midseason. This is going into the next season. This is when clubs in Europe want to spend money. This is when you don't necessarily want to sell players. But if you're going to do proper business, sometimes you have to bite the bullet and make the move when the time is right. And I think MLS is starting to come to that realization. You also, and this is something Atlanta United's done well, you have to be ready to pounce on the opposite side of it, taking the deal and then being ready to advance and go get somebody else. That's where you're at. We've talked about the Saudi Arabia deal with Pity Martinez and how that came out of nowhere. This is not necessarily coming out of nowhere, so I think you're probably a little better prepared. But Still, you're going into the market potentially for 2 designated players in a buyer's market, which would be pretty fascinating. It's still talk at this point. It hasn't progressed past that. Let's wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and obviously for the remainder of the run-up, about 54 minutes or so, anybody has questions, you can reach out to us at Soccer Down Here on Twitter. You can reach out to us individually. Jason's at Longshoe. I'm at OSG Nelson. Jared_Smith, we want him to be focused on the task at hand as he heads up to the mountains.
He's not driving, I don't think.
No, he's not driving. Okay, good. Well, then still focus on the task at hand. Make sure everything's fine. That his trek into the mountains is as it is supposed to be. Jason is keeping an eye on the Twitch pitch, so if you have thoughts on the Twitch end of things, twitch.tv/soccerdownhere. Jason's keeping an eye on that. I'm keeping an eye on Twitter. So we have all these different ways for folks to converse, and I know that you had a question that you posted to the floor. We can get into that in a little bit with everybody who's interacting with us in one place or the other. But before we get into the match this weekend, I want to get Jarrett's thoughts on the match from the midweek, but it looks like Jarrett has disappeared on his trip to the mountains.
Shocking. Jarrett's phone is garbage.
So when Jarrett comes back, I will get his thoughts about backwards before we go forward. You had tossed around the idea of the number one question that folks have coming into this match. What is your number one question coming into this match for Atlanta United?
I think my number one question in general is, I don't know why I'm getting an echo out of you, John. Check that real quick. My number one question in general is who's going to control the possession in this match? Because both teams want to. Orlando conceded it at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. They sat back more. They hit more on the counter. I don't think they do that at home. I don't think they do that in front of fans. So how does Atlanta handle that situation? Because we haven't seen them in it. Not at all this season. That'll be interesting to see. You know, are they going to be comfortable defending more and then hitting on the counter? Maybe that simplifies things for Atlanta. I'm not sure yet. But I want to see how Orlando approaches that because they played a little bit differently here. And do they do that at home? I don't think so. I think they play the way we expect them to play at home.
Yeah, and for me, my number one is looking at the starting 11 for Atlanta United. Brooks Lennon, for me, is my number one question. Looking at the quotes from Emerson Heineman earlier in the day, he said that Brooks wasn't supposed to play midweek, but he came in, played, did his standard killer job, and he's been absolutely balling out for as far back as I can remember when it comes to him being in the starting 11s. Does Brooks Lennon start? If he does not, then what does that look like on that side of the attack and for defense for Atlanta United? So I guess rotation and personnel would be my number one question going into an environment in Orlando.
Yeah, if people missed the Emerson Heineman quote, Brooks Lennon was supposed to have the night off on Wednesday. He was forced into the lineup when the Pity Martinez deal progressed to the point that he was held out of the lineup. That was supposed to be the off day for Lennon. Does the off day turn into Saturday? We'll have to see. Yeah. I don't know.
So that's my number one question that I have on the board. Obviously, anybody has questions about Orlando City, anything going forward, we can have that. Let me dive into the Twitter timeline here and go backward before we go forward. Tony Maupin had a question, and he wants to know if anyone has discussed the possible advantages to having both a coaching and DP slot open at the same time. Maybe the opportunity looks more attractive if they could possibly bring their star along, or maybe the star would love to follow his coach.
We haven't really seen that, so I'm not thinking of it in that manner that Tony mentions at the end, because unless you're bringing somebody along who has a young talent that might go with them, which is a pretty specific situation. I think it's appealing in the sense of you're going to have input into bigger decisions going into a team, just like we talked about at the very beginning of Atlanta United, how it's appealing to Tata Martino because he gets to shape a team from scratch, because that never happens. This isn't from scratch, but you're going to get to shape the stars of the team in a big way, the faces of the team in a big way. that can be pretty appealing. You're not going to have the say, you're not going to cut the check, but you're going to have the input, and you're going to be able to structure the team in the way that you want potentially based around that. That can be appealing. That can be exciting to some managers. So I don't know why this would be portrayed as a negative if both go down. Even if the Pity Martinez one goes down, that's a positive because of the money you bring in. It's a positive because of the salary he's going to get on the other end of it and how appealing that can be to future signings. If you have a Barco sale, and let's say it's Sevilla, because that's the new hot rumor, you sell a player for a large amount of money to the Europa League champions?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking different conversations here. You know, that was the reaction with the Alphonso Davies move to Bayern Munich. It's like, to Bayern Munich? What? This would be along those lines. So it would be a big deal. So then that ups the level of player you can get, in my opinion. That ups the amount of money you're going to be able to spend, and you might not have to spend as much to get the level of player you want. And I think it can appeal to a manager who maybe would have thought twice about coming to MLS. Maybe they don't now. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, we're in 2020 territory here, uncharted territory. This is something that we haven't seen with this team. This is something we haven't really seen in this league at this point. Yeah. With sales like this in the middle of the season, with the potential for what it can mean on the other side, with a managerial vacancy. I mean, there's so much going on at the moment. This is like Real Madrid kind of stuff at the moment, of crazy drama and what's going to happen next. That's kind of what it feels like.
But I think at the same time, though, I think it speaks so well for what Atlanta United is building in the conversation, not just here in this hemisphere, but in multiple theaters in South America, for bringing talent in and moving it on, whether it's to Saudi Arabia or to Europe. I think that it speaks well to what Atlanta United has been building over this last handful of years, where they're a part of the global conversation and moving players so quickly.
Cash is cash. You take the cash. You take it for whatever reason, and you go over and reinvest. I mean, that's what we've seen this club do. So it's going to be fascinating to see what directions they go, because you're going to be able to reshape this team with these two signings, plus whatever this U22 initiative thing is going to turn into. You could potentially add 5 impact players next season. If the U22 initiative is as advertised, 3 players who would count like young designated player money, who have to be under the age of 22, who you can spend whatever you want on the transfer fee. You get that, plus 2 designated player spots where you can pay them whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
plus a Jurgen Damm who's in your system for an entire offseason to build that, plus Kubo Torres you would anticipate that is going to have a full season here, plus that offseason to get you into the next season. I mean, there's a lot of parts here.
Yeah, it's a lot of different things. Bernd Dursberger says if Monchi buys Barco, and Monchi's the sporting director at Sevilla, director of football, I can't remember what his specific title is, but it's the same basic thing. Bernd says if Monchi buys Barco, it's a huge feather in our cap in terms of our scouting acumen from South America. Monchi's one of the best. It is. I think maybe it's a huge feather in the cap of being able to attract a player like that, because, I mean, he was being linked to big European clubs while he was at Independiente. You know, that's not new. I think he showed here flashes, and you wanted to see more. He had a problem staying on the field regularly, but he showed flashes of absolute brilliance. He had a great U20 World Cup, which is another thing that people look for and, scouts are looking for. So he helped himself during his time in Atlanta. There's no question about it. So I think, again, it does go to, you're going to have players who want to come here because of these deals. I really think that's the case, especially young players who are going to see the transfers, where these people are going, maybe with the exception of the Pity Martinez one, but you're also going to see what potentially Pity Martinez could be making in salary. All that is appealing. So it's going to be fascinating to see where we go from here. But it is still rumor when it comes to Ezequiel Barco. So let's keep that in mind before anything gets out of hand. That is the latest rumor of silly season.
Joe Bost is in this evening, and we answered his question with our predictions during Soccer Down Here this morning. But Joe's question is, can we score a goal?
Yeah, but you got to create more chances, and you've got to get more numbers into the final third. This team has to play with less fear in their attack. It's one thing if you're making mistakes in the final third, if you're misfiring, if you're shooting wide, if you're not on the same page. It's the last match more than anything. It felt like the team got hesitant. The pace was pretty quick in the first half to me, and the Brooks Lennon ball to Kubo Torres was what you're looking for. You didn't get the final result, and after that, it felt like you got gun shy, and you can't play that way. This team just cannot play that way. If you're going to have as much possession as they have, and they might not have that tomorrow. That's absolutely the case. You might not have 50% of the possession. You might have 45. You might have 40. Orlando's a team that can control the possession at home for sure. So when you have that possession, you've got to do more with it. There's just no way around it. You have to create more, because otherwise it's easy for teams to sit, to defend, to look to counter, and to get behind you. This is a team that has a shaky confidence level right now, and you're not going to win matches that way. They've got to get something going in a positive manner to give them confidence. That's a huge element of what's going on right now. They have to keep building on confidence. They've got to do things to create that confidence. Maybe a match like this where you do have a little bit lower block. You do sit a little bit deeper. Maybe if Jurgen Damm can give you more minutes here, and you can actually, one, he can make the runs in behind. Two, you can play the ball to him in behind. I haven't seen him willing yet to really open up and go. And is that because he doesn't think he's going to receive the ball? Is it because he's not fully comfortable yet physically? Don't know. Don't have the answer to that. But you've got to unleash that element. Jake Mulroney's speed is another element you can do. I'm really interested to get into that possession battle, and I'm interested to see where this game goes because of that. Because in some ways, when you're dealing with confidence issues, a game like this where you might have less of the ball, you don't have to carry the play, can make it a little simpler for you, can make it a little bit easier for you. And this is always going to be a team that wants to be that possession-dominant team. That's not going to change. But in a game like this, maybe it helps you when you're lacking in confidence to have less of the ball and to be able to simplify it.
You mentioned Jake Mulroney. Are you anticipating, because of schedule compression and rotation and things like that, that he might get a start?
We're all guessing on lineups. I mean, nobody knows right now. To be absolutely honest, nobody knows, because you don't know where the fitness levels are. Yeah. You are playing a lot of games in a short period of time. You have to give players fresh looks. Tyler Wolff is a prime example. You have to do that right now because guys just don't have it to go 90 minutes every game. They don't have it to play a lot of minutes in these conditions, traveling the day of, all these different things that just make it difficult. So, we don't know. Mulroney would make sense. We haven't seen him start in this run of games. Okay. Can he get a start? His speed could be useful in this one. Where's Dom at fitness-wise? He hasn't gotten to 30 minutes yet, so I don't know if he's going to be able to progress to that point. How is Kubo Torres after playing 90? Is he going to have a tired day here? Is he going to have a rest day? We don't know these things. The midfield. Are all three of those guys going to be able to go again and build some continuity? We just don't know. I do think Bello's back in the lineup for Castillo. I think he was given rest to be able to be fresh for Orlando. He's going to have a big test in Huan on the right side. Would not be surprised to see Jeff Larentowicz in the starting lineup here because he was given the rest day on Wednesday. Does he play from the start or does he come in the second half? Don't know. I think he could come in as the start. You've had guys play a good bit of minutes. Emerson Hyndman came back from injury. Does Rossetto need a day off? It's just these questions that We honestly don't know. And Atlanta's not the only team dealing with this. This is everybody right now. Lineups are a total guessing game around the league.
And if I remember my math correctly, from the matches at midweek, 6 teams did not score a goal. Another 7 teams only scored 1 goal from the matches midweek. And I think that we're getting to that point in the schedule, if we're not already there, where the legs are getting heavy because of travel, because of compression, and all these kinds of things. I think that we're there. We're getting there, or we're already there with what we saw midweek.
Thank you, Matt Wagner mentioned Gallagher could bring energy, and that's a player that I've kind of been waiting to see in this run of games. If Lennon gets his rest day here as opposed to Wednesday where it was set up for him, and Dom can't go 90 yet, but he can give you 30, Gallagher could get the other 60 on the right wing. He could factor in there. Split the difference between the two of them, and there you go. That might be the way to do it. I would like to see Gallagher come in here because one thing you're going to miss if you don't have Brooks Lennon is some of that energy. I mean, I feel like the guy that we've seen who has tried to provide a lift to this team in different ways on the field has been Brooks Lennon, who's new to the team, who's not a captain, who, you know, he gets the goal against Orlando. He's the one who's like clenching the fist and yelling at everybody like, let's go, let's go, let's go. He's the one who is making those desperation runs to try to inspire. Like, he feels like the one who is bringing that energy to this group. If you don't have him, you do need that. John Gallagher can play that role. I think Jake Mulroney can play that role. If you have the two of them wide to start, you have 2 guys who can get out on the run. If you have Mulroney on the left side and Orlando plays as we expect with Huon on the right, Huon's going to go. Orlando slides a lot, and especially right now with Joao Moutinho as a question mark with the groin injury that he suffered here in Atlanta. With Kamal Miller at left back, he's a center back. They're going to slide over. It turns into a line of 3 when Huon goes, and they want to send him as much as possible. If Atlanta can keep things simple and say, okay, here's what we do. They play long to that side. We win it. Huon's up. You play immediately over the top behind where he would be, and you let Jake Mulroney run. And if you don't win the first ball, win the second ball. Again, that's how the game can be simple in a situation like this. And maybe that is the way to go as you're trying to build some confidence. Shiva had a comment on the Twitch pitch. She said that Glassy said something interesting today. These games are like a preseason for this team right now for so many new players and a new coach. They're not showing results right now, but they want to do it the right way and show it at the end. That's why I'm excited about how this team turns around and what it will look like. I think Glassy, in a lot of ways, you hear some of the things he's saying after matches. It is about building something. It's about getting back to the basics. And the basics for Atlanta United are controlling games, are pressing, which we've seen more of. And I think sometimes we think of pressing as just we don't have the ball, play it long, go and chase. What we've seen under Stephen Glass more than we saw earlier this year, and more than we saw in Orlando for sure, is that ball that we talked about. You play it long over the top. You don't win the first ball. They win it. You immediately step up and challenge the counter press. You're trying to win it back. That's when teams are vulnerable. We've seen Atlanta do that more in these last couple of games. They need to continue to do that. That's something that's been a hallmark of the twos. That's something that's been a hallmark of the academy teams. You need to do that. It's easy with those young kids who are going to do whatever you tell them. Now you've got to do that with the first team, and especially in a game like this where you might not have that possession. You might not have that control so much. You need to look for those opportunities to win that second ball, and if you don't, continue to challenge and force the other team into a mistake. Sometimes it's you force them into a giveaway, they give you a throw-in, you immediately go. Stuff like that. Use that energy and challenge, and that's where a Gallagher, that's where a Mulroney could be really valuable tomorrow.
Artemis Prime, I'm going to pull his opening phrase aside. Okay. I'll say it, but I'm going to pull it aside. If Barco isn't in the matchday squad due to impending transfers, I'm going to pull that and push it over here. Who scores for Atlanta United? 4 of the 7 league goals this year transferred out. Only 2 league goal scorers from 2019 would be in the squad.
Well, I mean, you're looking at the players that would factor in up top. I mean, you're looking at Kubo Torres, who's been close. You're looking at Adam John, who needs more of the ball. You're looking at potentially, if a Brooks Lennon plays, if not, a John Gallagher, a Jurgen Damm, who both can get in. Gallagher has scored goals at the Atlanta United 2 level. He scored goals in college as a forward. If he's playing on the right wing, he still has that nose for goal that can help you in those moments. Could come from a set piece. I don't know. And that's the great unknown, isn't it? I mean, if you go back and you look at this, even beyond who's going to score the goals, who's going to create the shots. Let's go a step beyond the goals and a step beyond the chances. Who's going to create shots, period? You've lost about a third of them with Pity Martinez that you're creating per 90 minutes this season. If you take Barco out of that, you've lost not quite 2/3, but over half of your shots that are being created in a 90-minute stretch. That means others have to step up and start to do that. Rossetto is one whose numbers have gone up each match. He's starting to create more. He's not the focal point. Does he have to turn into it? Potentially. We know what Heineman can do in the final third. He might have to step up higher and give you some of that. You've got to get more from out wide with Lennon, with Mulroney, with Bello, with Escobar. You've got to get more of that as well. And you have to get something from your number 9. And we knew that was going to be an issue when Joseph Martinez was announced as injured. It's still an issue.
Can we talk back 4 for a second?
Sure.
When it comes to its evolution and what we've seen, I think that we can look at the relationship of Anton Walkes and Miles Robinson and the growth of George Bello. I think that those 3 of those 4, and obviously with Escobar on your right, I think that it's something that's evolving into something that's very, very solid, developing those relationships and developing that comfort level with each other. I think that it's something that definitely is a focal point here to keep the ball from going into the net, but I think we've seen some development there at the back 4.
Continuity. I mean, you're getting Robinson and Walkes playing games together, for a little bit of a run here. That's going to help. It helps Brad Guzan as well because you're getting consistency around you. Escobar, missed one. Okay, you've played with him so many times. I think that part's fine. Bello getting comfortable now. I think we're getting to the point that you're seeing George Bello as the number 1 left back in this team and gaining in comfort level and confidence, and I think gaining in defensive ability as well. That's been getting better and better and better. Now, he's going to have a huge test in this. If he's the left back and it's Huon bombing from a deep position and it's Chris Mueller on that side with Mauricio Pereira, who likes to drift over and help out, George Bello will have his toughest test as a starting left back. That's where you're at right now. He's got to have that trial by fire. That's just where you are with where this team is in 2020. And that means these young guys have to get this experience. They have to step up. And if they don't, they have to learn from it and step up next time because that's where we're at this point.
I mean, for me, that was the number 1 matchup that I was picturing in my head to keep an eye on for this entire match. Is that yours? If it does come to pass and these 11s are what we anticipate that they'll be, Bello versus Huon and Mueller?
You could go a million different directions. We can come up with all kinds of matchups because the other side, Nani and Escobar, is pretty tasty. Exactly there. Robinson and Daryl Dike, that's a good one. Depending on what Atlanta does on the flanks, if it's Ezequiel Barco going up against this holding midfield of Uri Rosell and maybe Junior Urso, maybe Sebastian Mendez, lots of different possibilities. What's
it been like to see this Oscar Pareja-led Orlando City team get to where they are right now, highest scoring team in the East at 1 point, 16 goals in their first 7? What's it been like to see this Orlando City team under Oscar Pareja for you?
Not a surprise. Oscar's one of the best managers in this country and in this hemisphere. He did some magic with the Colorado Rapids, did even more magic with FC Dallas. Should have been hired as the U.S. men's national team manager, in my opinion. and is going to build a monster in Orlando because he's got more resources in Orlando than he had in Dallas or Colorado combined. So you give him better talent, he's going to build you something pretty special. That's what it is. So it's not a surprise. Maybe it's a little quicker than I thought, but they made some good moves in the offseason. They brought in some guys on loan. They shored up some parts of the team that they needed, and they hit on their number 9 to back up Dom Dwyer and maybe replace Dom Dwyer and Daryl Dike, at least for right now. Daryl Dike looks like a special player at the moment.
I was going to say Dike has 5 of their last 8 goals, I think, is the number that I saw where Dike is concerned.
Something
how much
like
of how much of a handful is Dike?
He's 6'2" and listed at like 220. You do the math. That's real, and he can run, and he's smart with how he uses his body, and he makes good movement off the bench or off the ball. You know, he's a good player, and he's still young and learning, so it's only going to get better from here for him. Burns says, I like Robinson and walks, and they're getting better at playing out of the back, but as a combination, they're not ideal for a team that plays out of the back. At least one of them should be a tad better passing. I'd say give Campbell a run out with Miles and see what happens. Campbell would be more of a work in progress on the passing side. Burned. I like Campbell a lot. I think he has a very high ceiling, but that's probably the area of his game that I worry about the most. He would be a better matchup in terms of wrestling with Daryl Dike for 90 minutes. That's true. He's probably the biggest and strongest of your options at center back. And if you can make the balance work with him and, let's say, Robinson, then maybe you give Walks a day off here. Maybe that's something you can do. So you're going to have to probably rotate that. And Robinson could need the day off. That's the thing. We just don't know. Campbell, it would be as hard as it could be for Bello on the left side, dealing with Huon and Mueller. Campbell would have an absolute challenge here. But if he's going to get better, you have to find out, right? That's where we're at. I think George is a younger version of Miles, potentially stronger, potentially a little more dynamic, but far more raw than when Miles arrived here. He's younger, so I mean that's not a surprise. But yes, I would be very intrigued to see that. The passing part out of the back, I think that was the intention with Meza, and with him out, you kind of are what you are with your backups. So,
last question currently on the Twitters, and once again, let Jason see what's going on in your minds on the Twitch pitch. Let me know what's going on as I'm keeping an eye on Twitter at Soccer Dan here. Kefsey wants to know who's the captain and why.
The captain's Brad Gazan, and because he was named it, I don't know. Jeff Lorenowitz, I think, is technically the captain, but when he's not on the field, it is Brad Gazan. If Jeff gets the start tomorrow, which I'm not ruling out as a possibility, he would have the armband. Clubs do it differently. I mean, some do a player vote, which can lead to some problems. Ask Johan Cruyff about that one at Ajax. That's why he left. One of the reasons why he left. Sometimes the manager picks it. Sometimes the technical staff picks it. Sometimes the sporting director of football picks it. It's all different. So it just depends on the situation. A lot of times it's one of the more senior people in the team. Lorenowitz and Gazan have been here from the beginning. Gazan was signed but came here in the summer of 2017. Lorenowitz was one of the first. So for those guys to be the captains after they were the vice captains under Michael Parkhurst, it makes sense. It made sense going into the season. You normally don't change that up, and Stephen Glass wouldn't change that up right now because he's coming in an interim basis. So that's where you're at. We'll see going forward what that looks like, probably in next year, because we'll see what the team looks like next year.
Once again, give us predictions. Let us know what's on your mind, whether it's me on Twitter, Jason on the Twitch pitch. What's going on the Twitch pitch right now?
People are talking on the Twitch pitch, John. That's what they do. All kinds of different things. Kefsey said there, want somebody, and this makes more sense now. I follow the question. Want a guy who can get in the ref's ear and not get a card for this game. And if it's Jeff, it would be him because it would be him no matter what. You're not going to move the armband around to somebody else, though. this is how it operates. It's just a team leadership situation. It's one reason why I'm never a giant fan of goalkeepers being captains. Not because they can't be captains. Don't get mad at me. Hashtag GK Union. Just because I like generally for that person to be on the field so they can work the referee a little bit more. It's changed from back in the day when nobody else could talk to the referee but the captain. So maybe it's not as big of a deal as it used to be. Gives you just a little more weight when you're dealing with the referee, though.
Yeah, I mean, and for me, obviously, another concern for Atlanta United defensively going up against Orlando City is set pieces, because once again, we saw what happened with Junior Urso last time out at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and this obviously, I think for fans, it's going to be a focal point until further notice, is set pieces that they're having to defend, and when the other team is putting the ball in the back of the net, you're going to keep an eye on that.
Have to be better defending set pieces, especially have to be better with late runners. That's been the consistent issue. That was the problem with Orlando. That was the problem on the big chance from Miami. It's a late run into the box, and nobody's picking it up. That's got to change. It has to change, because when you're struggling in the run of play to create chances, and defensively you're okay in the run of play. You're really not bad in the run of play. But when you're giving up chances on dead balls like that, those are the backbreakers. And Remedi talked about it after the Orlando match last week, where you give up that goal on the Junior Urso header, and it breaks you a little bit. Yeah. You can't give up those opportunities, so you have to be more switched on. You just have to. And if they had the opportunity in training to do nothing from a running, sprinting, strenuous situation, and were able to just do set pieces for an hour, cool. You've got a lot of things you're working on, so you probably don't get the full hour on set pieces, but the late runs into the box. Because, again, the book's out. Like teams scout. Teams pay attention to these things. They see in the Orlando game, wow, they had 3 opportunities off of late runs into the box. I'm Diego Alonso. I'm looking at the film. Hey, guys, here's what we're going to work on the day before the match. You get the opportunity to do this, drop this one into one of the options on the set piece. Done. Orlando's going to have some new ones dialed up. Done. That's the issue. So, has to be better. Has to be better on set pieces. Burned about George Campbell, said that he's calm on the ball, which I agree. I think it's just handling pressure with his passing. And again, that's just experience. I mean, it's not going to get better without playing, but that's the potential pitfall in a game like this. I do like the matchup of him with Daryl Dike, though. That would be a very interesting battle. Campbell would have to keep his head, because he's been known a few times to lose his cool. We've seen it happen with Atlanta United, too. He would have to manage that. But Campbell has the potential to physically match up with Daryl Dike, which not a whole lot of defenders in this league do.
Yeah. And also, one of the guys that I've really been impressed with and continue to be impressed with is Pereira for Orlando City, with what he's brought to the table in his first round with Orlando City. I think that he's obviously turned into a handful for anybody for what we've seen for Orlando City, but I've really been impressed with Pereira this season with what he's been able to do.
It was a great signing. He's just gotten fit this season, and he's gotten comfortable with this team, but it was a good signing when he came in last year, and you dig into Mauricio Pereira a little bit in his game. I mean, a 30-year-old who comes in from Uruguay. He was playing at Krasnodar in Russia. People kind of forgotten about him. He was good there. I mean, looking at his past record, he had some years with 3, 6 goals. He had one with 9. He generally had around 5 or 6 assists. Can't say I watched him at Krasnodar, so I don't know what kind of role he was playing in. But here he's in a more conductor kind of role, because you've got Nani on one side, you've got Mueller on the other, you had Dom Dwyer, now you've got DK. He's pulling the strings. So he's got a lot of things to work with. What I like about him is his movement that opens up space for Nani, for Mueller to come inside, for Junior Urso to make that run, for Sebastian Mendez to make that run. I like what Pereira does as much without the ball as what he does with the ball. Burned on Twitch said, any tactical change by Glassy to relieve pressure on our midfield? And these are the things that are so difficult, Bernd, right now, because any kind of like real tactical change, you're not going to be able to really work on it for long at any kind of normal speed because of the training times. It's so hard to implement those things because Steven's coming in from the twos. You know, he's had these guys for a few weeks, about a month now, and you haven't had a whole lot of training. Once you got into these games, you're not able to make a whole lot of adjustments. You know, the adjustments are talking, watching, working on it on a board, but not actually training it. So I'm curious to see what he could do. I wonder if the easiest change would be, instead of what we've seen generally with one sitting behind two, and of course you have an 8 who's going to go back and forth and give you both, but it's generally been one sitting behind two central midfielders if you flip it, and you go two sitting behind one. Maybe just that helps relieve some of the pressure. Maybe it just gives you a little more of an outlet as you're building up play, gives you a runner who can make a later run who's not picked up as easily, things like that. Just a little tweak there, which is not major. Players can handle on the fly in something like this. You've got players who can play that role. I think any of your central midfielders can play that more 8 role, and I think it can work. I think that's probably what you're stuck with. I think it's that kind of move that you're stuck with, something simple. Shiva says, would you rather see an ugly win tomorrow or a pretty loss? Ugly win. You need points, and a win's going to give you more confidence than a pretty loss. You've had some... People will argue about pretty. You've had some good play in these games where you haven't gotten results. You need results. Results are always going to give you more, because then you can. It's a lot easier after a result to say, "Hey guys, here's the video. This was garbage. This was just awful play here. We got to fix that." It's harder to do that after a loss because people are shut down. They don't want to hear that. It takes them longer to be open to hearing about things they can get better at. After a win, you can have that conversation a little bit easier. I think then you can progress faster. Mogi Mo, thoughts on moving Barco to the 10 and starting Mulraney on the left? I love it. I love the idea of Barco as the 10. Then you would have either Heinemann or Rossetto with Remedi or Lorenowitz. Remedi could be the 8 as well if you wanted to go that way. It's just all about the minutes and who's the freshest. That can work. That could absolutely work. I love the idea of Barco as a true number 10 as a playmaker. We just haven't really seen it during his time here because Miguel Almiron was in that role in 2018. The idea was to play Pity Martinez in that role for most of last season, and Barco's had problems getting a consistent run and building up some momentum. But I love the idea. We'll just have to see, because I like the idea of Mulraney out wide with his pace. Joe says, how do we fix our final third play beyond the individualized nature of the game there? I think the biggest thing is changing the mentality at this point, because, again, you're not going to be able to work a whole lot on the patterns. You're not going to be able to drill things. You're going to have to talk about attitude there, and you've got to give the guys the freedom. And I don't think Stephen Glass has taken this away from them, but for whatever reason they look hesitant. You've got to give guys the understanding of, I'm not going to be mad at you. It's not going to affect your playing time if you make a mistake in the final third. But I need you to do something that could potentially create a mistake. If you're just playing safe there, it's not giving us anything. I need you to understand that a mistake is okay in the final third. A mistake in possession in the middle third, not the same conversation. A mistake in possession in the defensive third, no. Yeah. A mistake in the attacking third, that's okay. Try stuff. Don't be afraid. It's the attitude as much as anything at this point, Joe. Ragamuffin wants me to work Ragamuffin into the call tomorrow night. That's not too much of a stretch. There's some, when this stuff comes up and it's like a word sneak or whatever, sometimes it's just ridiculous stuff, and yeah. it would sound hokey. Ragamuffin is something that could happen. I'm not making any promises, but if it happens, it happens, and you'll know, and it'll be a little wink and a nod. You'll understand. That's one that I could see feasibly happening. Kevsey says, who's got a track record of scoring winners versus Orlando on this squad? Answer, Eric Remedi. That's true. Remedi, how many minutes has he played here lately? Pretty decent bit. He didn't look so great against Orlando. He looked good against Miami, I thought. He looked great against Nashville. I'd love to have him in there because he is, along with Hosetu, like Hyndman feels like more of a classy attacking central midfielder. He doesn't do the unexpected as much. He's very good. I think he's very refined. He's very good. Hosetu we're still getting to know. I think Hosetu's got maybe the most technical skill of all of them, but he's still getting comfortable. He's still opening up. It feels like every game he starts to try more and feel more comfortable. Remedi's the one who will give you a ridiculous chipped pass that just not many people are going to give you. He's the one who will try stuff. He's the one that can give you that kind of wild abandon in the midfield from an attacking perspective that you need. And this could be a game where you need it because you might not have a ton of opportunities to create those. Joe wants a 3-5-2 with Kubo and Barco up top floating. That could happen. Again, you just don't have a lot of time to work on changes to the shape, and you're trying to build into a 4-3-3, so you might kind of have to focus on that. Could this team play a 3-5-2? Yeah, they have the personnel, I think, to play whatever you want, so it's definitely possible. Barco as a second forward is more of a 10. He's just in a very free role. That suits him. He can play that. He can go drift and find the game. Your wingbacks would be Lennon or Gallagher or Escobar potentially, and that would be an easy way to work Campbell in and take some of the pressure off if you wanted to go that direction. You could play Escobar as the right wingback. Bello thrives as a left wingback. So, I mean, it definitely can work, Joe. It's just the idea of can you do that on the fly here with probably video sessions to really work on it and minimal time on the field. They have experience in it, so that helps you. One more before we get back into Twitter or questions from you, John.
Yep.
Byrne talking about the central midfield. He said, good idea, play it like Tata with Jeff and Carmona, more of a 6 and an 8, but an 8 who is comfortable sitting more as you need. That's where I think Remedi can be that guy. Byrne says, one thing I noticed is that on offensive transitions, the team slowed things down many times, almost like FDB's instructions are still ingrained. I think sometimes they just have to let it rip again and take the risk. They have to take risks. That's the biggest thing that stood out to me against Miami was first 10 minutes, it felt like they were really focused on playing fast, which they needed to be. And that's a good first step to increasing the pace of play. And it felt like it pulled back after Kubo's miss. And I don't know why. I mean, Kubo went for a very high degree of difficulty finish. He didn't hit it. He didn't, horribly miss it. He just didn't connect. And he put it wide. And it felt like from there, instead of playing that kind of ball, which is a fairly low percentage ball from Brooks Lennon, that he hit perfect, it felt like you then came back into we've got to have the perfect play. And look, we had this talk about teams with Tata, teams with Frank. I mean, at times they really look for the extra pass, and that's something this team's always had in them. But in those times, especially under Tata, when you looked for the extra pass, it was still taking a chance. You maybe had one too many passes in taking that chance. You should have just let it rip. But that's a different issue. That's maybe too confident. Right now, it's not confident enough to where they pull back and they're worried about losing the shape. And they have changed the shape, so that could factor in. But the shape, the structure of the team, I think has been good in all three games under Stephen Glass. The structure was good against Nashville. The structure was good against Orlando. That wasn't the issue in the loss to Orlando. And the structure was good against Miami. So you got that. Believe in it. Trust it. Go forward. Take chances. And if it doesn't come off, trust in the structure to defend and regain possession. That's what you have to do. What else do we have on Twitter?
We're caught up on Twitter, but
what do you have?
To your point that you just had, it was trusting in the defense, and I guess that was to my original point about that back four with the continuity that's back there. You would like to think and hope that over time that your confidence in that back four that is as constant as it has been will allow you to have that confidence going forward that you need to put those chances forward in the final third.
Yeah, and look, it's hard to have the confidence because, I mean, we all hear the comments, right? You've had a tough time in Orlando in the tournament. You had your manager leave, be asked to leave, whatever. You have struggled in front of goal. You're missing the guy who gives you confidence in number 7. You are now losing your player who creates the majority of your chances due to a sale. You have the rumors. We'll see if it has an effect tomorrow. The rumors swirling about Ezequiel Barco. Those are all things that shake confidence. Just losing Joseph is a huge dent to your confidence, because that idea about Brooks Lennon hits that perfect ball, which is a low percentage ball. Well, Julian Gressel would hit that kind of ball. Brooks Lennon can hit that kind of ball because when it was Gressel, he had the idea that, and he said it. He said it to us on the postgame show before. I felt like I didn't hit it well. I felt like I overhit it. I felt like I underhit it, and Joseph still scored. Joseph was the safety valve. He would fix it. You don't have that now. You don't have that same feeling about Adam John. You don't have that same feeling about Cubo Torres yet. You need to keep feeding them. You just have to. Because if they don't produce, somebody else is going to come in there. That's the deal. I mean, that's where you're at this point. If you keep giving opportunities to players and they're not producing with them, then they're not going to play. Maybe Manuel Castro has kind of fallen into that after opportunities in Orlando that he did not produce on. Another big opportunity. It hasn't happened for him. The pecking order's changed. That's pro sports. It's this game, especially if you're a player in the final third. That's where you make your bread and butter. But now it's not even to that point, because Adam John's not seeing chances. Cubo Torres isn't seeing chances. So you can't even get to that point talking about goal scorers, because you're not creating enough chances for your goals to be scored, because you've got to trust and you've got to keep giving those opportunities. That attitude has to change in the team. You cannot play scared and do what this team wants to do. You can't be a scared possession team. It doesn't work. Yeah. You can be a scared defend and counter team, because that's your setup, is to be worried about the opposition, put more numbers behind the ball, and try to get out on the break. If you're in possession, you have to be brave, because you see it when you build up out of the back. You have to be brave to play out of the back. I mean, if you are Brad Gazan and you have a goal kick and you have your 2 center backs inside the 18 with you, and the other team has 3 guys right outside the 18 ready to step up and pressure, you have to be brave to play to Miles Robinson. He has to be brave to find a solution. You can't play scared in possession. You can't play scared in the attacking half either, because then you don't create. You can't do that. So this team's got to get through that mental block. It almost is feeling like that at this point, that it is a mental block, and they have to find their way through it. This game, which might flip it, even though they don't want to be a sit and counter team, and they're never going to intend for that to happen, it might be a game where they are playing in that manner more because of the opposition. That might help them get through the mental block. That's what I'm hoping happens if they don't have as much of the possession here, that it just simplifies the game for them.
Information, I'm going to give it an incomplete at the moment. MLS Soccer is saying that João Matinho is out with the groin injury, but I haven't found any other secondary source to back that up for this match yet. Was looking at our juice boxes, and they have changed during the match, during the time we've been on the air.
Wow. Maybe we're affecting it.
Orlando City minus 130.
Okay.
Atlanta United plus 321, and your draws at plus 299.
Yeah, I mean, that feels a little exaggerated, but Orlando should be the favorite here. There's just no way around it. Anytime you get over 300 for an Atlanta team, even playing in this way, that's appealing. It feels like a little bit of a, hey, we need some action on this number.
We want to draw this back, so we're going to jack up the number.
Yeah, we're gonna get some action out of this. But I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm going to be biased because I'm seeing this team more than these odds makers are. I'm seeing this team more than people who don't follow Atlanta United on a regular, and I have a belief that this team can play better than they are. They have to show that, though. That's just the reality. I mean, we can have a belief, we can think that this guy has the track record to do this and this guy can do this, but if they're not doing that, then you're in the situation you're in right now where you start to have the questions. You have to answer the questions from within. I think this team has to answer those questions from within, and you need that leadership within the locker room to take over. And if it's not working with the way the leadership structure has been, then somebody new has to step up and support your leaders and find a way to get through and change the vibe and change the attitude. I don't know what it is. I don't know how this team started to question itself before Orlando in the manner that it appears that it does on the field. But you're not going to win that way. You're just not. You can't play that way at the top level. You can't play scared at the top level. You have to have more confidence, more swagger to play and get results.
Yeah, and I mean, on the offensive end, and even going back to the last match against Inter Miami and then the match against Orlando previous, it just seems like offensively, and it's something that we've seen a lot of, you're looking for the team to play faster. And there was a moment in the Inter Miami match where you could actually see Matheus Rossetto in center circle making the movement and trying to encourage the team to play faster. And that's something that I know that a lot of fans are looking for as well.
Yeah, and you do, and you want to play faster. I feel like now the structure is strong enough to do that. If you're not comfortable in the shape, if you're not comfortable with the people around you, you're going to be hesitant. I get it. You're going to take a little bit longer because you're still scanning options. You're still feeling it out. It should be further along now, and you need to quicken the pace where you can. You have to know. Look, here's the thing. You can't play at the same pace the whole 90 minutes. You just can't. The top teams don't. Top possession teams don't. Possession team doesn't just play fast, play fast, play fast. You got to know when to slow it down. You got to know when to speed it up. You have to know when to put your foot on the gas and when to take it off. That's where this team doesn't have that yet. I think Rossetto can be a player that makes those decisions and knows when to accelerate and when not to. That's maybe the biggest thing that you don't have right now that Darlington Nagbe gave you, was that feel for when to speed up and when to slow down. That's a very hard thing to quantify. I think Rossetto has some of that in him. Keep getting him on the ball more, and we'll see if he can set that pace for this team and create those opportunities. And if Barco is in the 10 role, give him that opportunity, because he does that as well. He does it from a more attack-minded position, but he feels that pace for sure.
Officials for the match. Your center ref is Victor Rivas.
Boy.
Yeah. Your assistant refs, Eric Weisbrod, Jose da Silva. Your fourth is Rubiel Vasquez. And your VAR is quick trigger, Chris Pinso.
Oh, boy. Well, Pinso didn't give a red to Franco Escobar, but the disciplinary committee did. So I don't know if we can go quick trigger anymore on him. We'll see. Victor Rivas didn't exactly make friends on the Atlanta United side of things with his decisions in the Cincinnati match. So,
yeah.
Interesting.
That's why I thought I would bring that up, just to get your reaction for having Rivas in the middle for this one.
Very, very interesting. We'll see. That'll about do it for the run-up. Thanks for hanging out with us, y'all. Appreciate it. We'll be back in the morning for a Power Hour edition of SDH. We will talk more Atlanta, Orlando. We will also talk about how Messygate has concluded, kind of, sort of, maybe not. We'll get into that a good bit in the morning. We will talk about Nations League and the games we have seen so far. I don't know how Nick Alifi feels about his Italians after today.
Faroe Islands at the death, baby.
Yay. We'll get into all that in the morning. We'll run through your odds for MLS as well. Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all the commentary. Thanks for all the passion. We appreciate it. And thanks for sharing the word about what we do. It helps us continue to do what we're doing and continue to grow. So y'all have a good rest of the night. Talk to you in the morning. Much plot, y'all.
Much plot, y'all.